We have a lot to cover in today's video, including some off-season speculation around the Toronto Maple Leafs. They find themselves down in the series against the Boston Bruins. If they can't come back and have an early exit, could we see some significant change? We'll discuss the latest rumblings around the Leafs. Plus, we also have some other news around the NHL, including some updates on William Nylander's status for the playoff series against the Bruins. What is he dealing with? When could he maybe come back? What's the future of Patrick Kane hold? Will he be back in Detroit or not? We'll recap the recent playoff games. We have a signing in Chicago, news around the NHL's Canadian TV rights for next season, as well as other injury updates and other news around the league. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As we mentioned, we have a lot to cover today. Before we jump into a lot of the news around the NHL, we did get some pretty sad news today in the world of hockey. The legendary broadcaster Bob Cole, who worked for all those many years of Hockey Night in Canada, has sadly passed away at the age of 90. Of course, Bob Cole had, I think it was over 50 years in the NHL in the game, broadcasting. Like, I know for many of us, if you're anywhere from, I guess even as young as in your 20s or younger, depending on how long you've been watching hockey, if you're up to your 40s, 50s, you probably think of Bob Cole as kind of being the soundtrack of hockey for your, the key moments in the game that you witness over growing up and into your early adulthood. I mean, he's a legendary broadcaster. In my opinion, there's really been nobody better. His ability to call the game the way he did was second to none. I know towards the end of it, the last few years, he was maybe getting a little bit more forgetful and stuff, and I've seen some of the younger generation kind of giving him a hard time, but at the end of the day, you really got to appreciate Bob Cole for what he was. Like I said, when I think back of all the key moments in hockey history that I remember watching, whether it's at least majority of them, like, it's his voice that comes to my mind. Like, I can hear his voice in my head. And Bob Cole was proud to be from Newfoundland. He certainly had like a major impact on the game. Like, I think everybody kind of stopped today around, between 1 and 2 o'clock Eastern time when the news broke of his passing, and just started to remember him and, flood social media with all their memories of, whether it be famous clips or interactions or those who were lucky enough to be around him. Just phenomenal human, phenomenal broadcaster that many people have, aspired to be like. I know, like, for myself, like, he's one of the people that I think of when I first, I know this, I don't do what he does, but obviously if I could be a play-by-play guy in NHL, I would absolutely love that. And he would be my inspiration to want to do that. But he's just somebody who's just, so synonymous with the game of hockey that it's hard to imagine him not being here. Really, like I said, there hasn't been anybody like him, in my opinion. So I certainly felt the need to take the time to address, Bob Cole's passing. Certainly offer my condolences to any of his friends, family, anybody impacted by the loss here. Just an incredibly sad day in the world of hockey. We're certainly better, and thankful to have had him involved with the game for so long. So rest in peace, Bob Cole. You'll certainly never be forgotten. Your voice will live on and forever, really. As long as we have people watching the game, you'll be part of some of the league and the game's biggest moments in its history. So probably be another one like him come again. Now, speaking of play-by-play voices, there was some speculation around Jack Edwards' retirement in Boston that we might see John Forsland leave the Seattle crew and head to replace Jack in Boston. That apparently seems to be not the case. Apparently, we did learn today that the Kraken are changing TV partners, and that they're going to be partnering with the King 5 channel to broadcast more than 70 games next year, and he appears to be part of the broadcast crew still. So it looks as though that rumor that had circulated a couple weeks back might not have anything to it. So we'll see what the Bruins decide to do as far as getting a new voice to replace the longtime play-by-play commentator Jack Edwards. A couple of recalls today. The Predators have recalled Jussi Parssinen. Obviously, he's expected to likely get in the lineup. And the Canes have recalled Ronan Seeley as well. He's just expected to be another member of the Canes Black Ace group. We also found out today that Team Canada announced their coaching staff for the upcoming World Championships, which will run in middle of May. Head coach is going to be Andre Tourigny, who coached the Arizona Coyotes, will remain head coach for the new Utah franchise. Joining him on the bench will be Jay Woodcroft, former coach of the Oilers, Dean Evison, former coach of the Minnesota Wild, and longtime assistant coach Steve Ott. So that crew will make up Team Canada's coaching staff. There's also some good news today out of Arizona. We found out today that there is a group of NHL alumni partnering with Olympic hockey champion Lindsey Fry to form and launch a foundation which will help preserve amateur hockey in the state of Arizona. Obviously, with the Coyotes departing, there was certainly a lot of concern over youth hockey and a lot of the programs and the funding and, how that's all going to work out. I mean, we've seen the game grow in the area substantially. Like, if it wasn't for the Coyotes, we may not have NHL players like Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes, who certainly grew up in the state, and that team played a big role in inspiring them to play. And you'd hate to see that progress be stunted because of their relocation, but at the same time, they may come back. We know that there's plans with Alex Muriel in the NHL to eventually get back into the Arizona market, but we don't know exactly when that's going to be. And obviously, whether it's 5 years or more, that's a long gap to not have, something kind of ignored. And obviously, there's not for sure that the Coyotes, because the Coyotes technically still exist in name, and I guess in spirit, you could say, with Alex Muriel attempting to bring these guys back. Of course, with the different players and different everything, it won't be the same if they do return. But he made it clear that the franchise still intends to participate and kind of help look after some of these things, but there's not a lot of confidence that's going to happen. Obviously, like I said, a lot of people don't have a ton of faith in Muriel, and they want to make sure of it and not just take his word for it. So obviously, it's nice to see these alumni and locals down there, like obviously Lindsey Fry, another great hockey player from the state of Arizona, another great example of the professional league being in the area, inspiring them to play. So some of the alumni included in this venture include Jason Demers, Greg Adams, Michael Grabner, Darcy Hordichuk. So that group will continue to make sure that there's lots of funding and programs available for youth hockey in Arizona, and make sure that they continue on their pace and that there's still lots of talent coming out of the state in the future to hopefully make their mark in the professional ranks. We also got word today that the Chicago Blackhawks have extended pending RFA defenseman Alex Vlasic. Of course, he's been an emerging part of that blue line. Certainly was pretty clear that he was going to be a good fit for them long term. He made it clear at the end of season media availability he was hoping to sign a long-term deal, and that he has. He gets a 6-year extension at $4.6 million. So, of course, this is his second contract coming out of his ELC. So I think that's pretty fair. I know a lot of people were speculating it could be up around the $5 million mark. So that's, I think, a pretty fair deal for both sides. The last year or two, I believe the last 2 years of the contract, he'd be eligible for trade protection, and they did give him a modified 10-team no trade, which is not too big a deal. I don't mind those ones. It's those full team or full no move clauses that really bother me. I think those really should be reserved for the absolute top players and not handed out like candy on Halloween, which is what some teams have chosen to do with them. As I mentioned as well, we have news regarding the Canadian broadcast rights for the NHL hockey. Of course, we know Rogers is the national rights holder. We had talked about a couple weeks back that there was speculation that part of that was going to be sold off to Amazon, and that has indeed turned out to be true, and it's been officially confirmed by the NHL here today. They've confirmed the announcement that the rights holder Rogers has sold the Monday night rights to Amazon Prime. So all games on Monday nights that the NHL normally broadcasts now on Sportsnet in Canada will move to Amazon. They will be produced by Amazon, have their own crew and everything of that nature. I don't know all the details exactly and who will be doing the play calls and all that, but we do know that Rogers will no longer have the Monday night stuff. So if you already have Amazon Prime in Canada, there's nothing new or different you need to do. You'll be able to tune in through your Amazon Prime subscription for the Monday night games that are nationally broadcasted. Otherwise, you would need to get that if you want to watch those games. So obviously, I know some people are unhappy. They don't want to have to get another subscription. But I think long term, like I said before, there's still a couple years left on the Rogers deal with Sportsnet for the NHL rights in Canada. I honestly think it's going to be mostly the streaming services that pick up the national rights package once that comes up. It's believed that Sportsnet does not want to be the national rights holder once that deal expires. We've heard some speculation about TSN maybe getting involved. We've also heard talk of TSN maybe even buying a portion of what's left here in the next 2 years as well from Sportsnet. So we've seen part of it go to Amazon. Part of it could still go to TSN. That could be a separate deal for some separate games. I don't know for sure exactly what the rumor package would be, but that indeed for sure is happening, and we'll likely learn more details on that as we get closer to the season. And the other thing also today I want to talk about Patrick Kane. I know we talked a little bit about yesterday, the kind of cryptic tweet he put out on his Twitter page, or X I guess we call it now, kind of saying almost like it felt like a goodbye message to Detroit, even though he's still a long ways off from free agency. Based on his end of season media availability, there was different takes on how he felt there. I think there was desire to come back, but belief was that he may not be able to get the contract he wants from the Red Wings and Steve Yzerman, so it may not work out for him to stay. We don't know exactly where that's going. I know Friedman talked about that today as well on the Jeff Merrick show, and he said basically that he's been told after looking into it that it's not a foregone conclusion that he's gone. You'd be a little bit careful to go that far with it right now, but it's a highly unusual practice for a player this early into the offseason to be putting a social media post basically thanking the organization, teammates, and everybody for the great season, great memories, etc. Like, you never see that. That never happens. Once a player officially leaves, signs somewhere else, yes, sometimes that happens. It's not a big deal, but it's just bizarre. So I know many of us are convinced that he's likely not heading back to Detroit. It's difficult to say where he's going to go. I think he's going to want to go to a team where he has a chance to win and get into playoffs, and somewhere he can get some term. I think he's kind of going to be looking for 2 or 3 years anyways. I don't know if he'd want more than that, maybe, but I would suspect it's going to be at least that. And he proved this past year he can still play at a high level. So I'm sure he'll have his fair share of suitors out there. So we'll see where that goes. But I know for those of us saying Kane likely gone from Detroit, Friedman says it's possible, but just maybe not quite just yet to draw that conclusion. Also, some updates on William Nylander. We get an update from Elliotte Friedman today, and of course, like he's kind of positioned this, and it's been very difficult to kind of nail down for sure what's going on. We talked yesterday that there was some speculation that it could be a concussion or a head injury, and it could be. But according to Friedman, the belief is, and this is not confirmed by the team, this is just what the insiders have been able to dig up, trying to figure out what's going on with the Toronto Star player who's been out of the lineup here, that is some issue with migraines. And migraines can, be a side effect of concussions. So it could be concussion related, but it may not be. There's several other factors that, could be causing this, and it can be a real nuisance. Migraines for some people who struggle with them can come and go. You can be feeling good one day, not good the next. You can be feeling good part of the day. And, so like, I'm sure that they're trying to nail down the root cause, and obviously, try to do what they can to help him feel better. So it explains why there's been no real answers. I still don't think they handled things properly. I wish they would just come out and said that it's, even if they just said, look, listen, it's an undisclosed injury. They're trying to get things figured out. We don't have an exact timeline on how long he's going to be out. Just something. Instead of saying no updates on Willie, no updates on Willie. To me, like, that was just kind of dumb and just kind of fueled the speculation. Like I said, there's been tons of theories floating around, half of which are almost conspiracy-like, and it just, the Toronto American is a very passionate fan base over their hockey. They want to win. They, and they need their star players to play like star players. And when you have one of them not even in the lineup and now find them trailing in the series, I can understand why they'd be antsy to know. And everybody's it's just fueling speculation. So I don't understand why they don't come out. They don't have to give all the details. I understand they don't like to reveal too much, but every other team is at least giving some updates saying, day to day, week to week, or upper body, lower body, like just something. So they tone down the talk and the outside noise. But that's the latest on Nylander, so it's really not clear if he can play in Game 4. I guess at this point they're probably taking it day by day, see how he feels, and we don't know. So I don't know that we're really gonna be able to put more of a definitive answer and timeline on it than that. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, last night's action saw the Bruins take a 2-1 series lead over the Maple Leafs with a 4-2 victory. Early on, the Leafs actually had a pretty good game. Jeremy Swayman got back in the net for the Bruins and again beat them for the second time in the series. And I think he's got, I can't remember how many games in a row now that he's beaten them in total here. But Swayman has really owned the Leafs for the most part. Marner did have one nice play where he set up a goal by Matthew Knies. Other than that, he was still really quiet. Fair to say, special teams was the difference in the game. I've seen some, and unfortunately, I don't want to say it's the whole fan base because I know it's not. Every fan base has their people that are very vocal and complain a lot and find excuses and what have you. But like, there is a group of them for sure that I've seen on my social media pages, like just completely blaming everything on the refs and the power plays, and they didn't call this, they didn't call that. Well, at the end of the day, the Leafs did get more power plays than the Bruins, but what's a power play going to do for you if you ain't capitalizing on it? And at the end of the day, the Leafs are 0 for 5, and they still can't get the power play going in the playoffs, and that's a big problem. The Bruins only had 3 opportunities, and they scored twice. Jake DeBrusk continues to be hot against the Leafs. He loves playing Toronto. It brings up the best in him for some reason. Marchand took over the game late, got the go-ahead goal and the empty netter. Does Brad Marchand get away with stuff? Does he pull antics that are, crossing the line or right on the line? Sure he does. He knows how to. He's a wily veteran at this point. He's going to get under your skin. He's going to piss you off. He's going to do what he can to get you off your game. And yeah, there's times when he might get away with stuff, but he's a what I call a habitual line stepper. Like he knows and he's learned over the years what he can get away with and what he can't. And you have to beat him on the scoreboard. Don't let him give you those opportunities at the end of the day. And they have been. So, the Leafs, they need to win the next one, obviously, or it's going to be a real tough comeback and have to be 3 straight games if they go down 3-1. They say you're not in trouble until you lose at home. Well, that's what happened last night. So we'll see if they can bounce back. They get an extra day break. They don't play now until Saturday night, obviously. So we'll see what happens in that respect. Obviously, if Nylander can play, could be make a difference. If they get him back, maybe that helps fix the power play. So, the Matthews line with Domi and Bertuzzi has been pretty good, generally speaking. But like I said, Marner has kind of disappeared. We're going to talk about Marner a little bit further here because he's getting a lot of the blame for the lack of success right now. And we'll see what his future holds. Obviously, we saw the Kings upset the Oilers in overtime, 5-4. Kopitar with the winner on a little bit of a weird play. But if you watch it slowly, it looks like it was something a lot of people thought because the puck did go off Byfield to Kopitar, and it looks like it was intentional. But the Oilers players, some of them thought the puck was going for icing, and they stopped skating. And you should never do that. But the Kings got ahead early. Kempe was strong with a couple goals. I wouldn't say Skinner was bad last night, but he wasn't as good as he needs to be. A couple extra saves there would have come up good. At the end of the day, though, it was a game that the Kings were in. The Oilers did manage to kind of score their fair share to get it tied up, and obviously the game goes to overtime. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Kings kind of steal one, in my opinion. So obviously we'll see what happens here as this series shifts now down to LA. Vegas takes a 2-0 lead on Dallas. They absolutely smothered them last night. A 3-1 victory. Dallas only mustered 21 shots. Logan Thompson only had to make 20 saves. Made it way too easy on them. Dallas has to find their game here, or they're going to be in big trouble. This next game is basically a must-win. If they go into Game 4 down 3-0, that's game over, especially where they have to go play in T-Mobile in Vegas. That's going to be tough. Really, really tough. The Dallas Stars had a phenomenal regular season, but they could be victim here to the LTIR-loving Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm not here to complain about the usage of LTIR. I'm not going to say that the Vegas Golden Knights are cheating, because they're not. They're totally within the rules, but they do know how to manipulate those rules, I think, better than any team in the NHL. And you can say what you want about Mark Stone. The fact is his use of LTIR allowed him to add Hurdle and Hanifin. And I can understand why fan bases of other teams would be frustrated with that. But yeah, it's just that's 3 years in a row that he's gone on LTIR in February. 1 year they missed the playoffs. 1 year they won the cup. What'll happen this year? Looking like a pretty strong team at this point. Stone and Hurdle didn't even play together until game 1 of the playoffs, and you didn't think they were playing together for years. They just clicked, and they're doing really, really good. So we'll see where things go on the forefront here for tonight. Only 2 games tonight: Florida, Tampa, Islanders, and Carolina. So no late games tonight. Now, as I mentioned, the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's been lots of speculation, and I did a video talking about the same topic back, I want to say, just a little bit before the playoffs started. And I think the rhetoric has kind of ramped up here around this franchise being down 2-1. Like I said, Marner's been pretty quiet, fairly invisible in this series. I thought Matthews has been pretty good. And, of course, Nylander's been absent, dealing with his injury or whatever we want to call that situation, obviously medical related. And, you have to wonder, what is the outcome going to be if they falter in this first round and lose this first round series? Mitch Marner has been proving year after year that he struggles to perform in the playoffs. I honestly think, and this is just my personal opinion, that the pressure gets to him. I think it's pretty evident, pretty clear that him being the hometown boy in a market that has suffered for a long time without seeing any kind of serious playoff success and no Stanley Cups, I think he puts a lot of that weight on himself, and he knows he's a good player and he can have a big impact one way or another. And at the end of the day, I think the pressure gets to him. Like, surprisingly, he does perform better at home than on the road. And like I said, he did have that one really good play last night, but outside of that, sometimes he's playing to not get hurt. Like, he won't go in the corners and dig. And it's just like, I don't know. You need warriors out there. You need a combination of skill and drive and desire and just that, that attitude that nobody's going to stop me, and I just feel like sometimes they don't want to get hit and they don't want to play the gritty game. They have their guys that can do that, but those guys are not the impact players that need to do that. That's the problem. I know I've seen somebody on social media summarize it best. Like, the Toronto Maple Leafs team is a highly skilled team that's built around having skill that needs time and space to execute. You give them time and space, they're going to make you pay. But in the playoffs, time and space disappears, as does the Leaf results. And you do see glimpses of it when they get that opportunity. It's just not consistent enough to have long-term success. And until they can do that, they won't go far in the playoffs. That's the key part that they got to figure out, is they got to figure out how to create time and space for themselves. Because it's difficult to find in the playoffs. You get smothered. It's just that simple. So you have to wonder, with Mitch Marner, though, needing a new contract, if they have an early first-round loss, what kind of reaction are you getting from ownership, from Shanahan, from Trey Living? Are we going to see significant change? Are they going to want to shell out another long-term contract of $13, $14 million for somebody who struggles in the playoffs and can't help them get over the hump? Like I've said before, you need to be very, very careful about trading Mitch Marner, because he does play a very important role for you. But I guess the question you got to ask is, at the end of the day, is the money worth it when he doesn't perform at the most critical time of year? Or do they trade somebody else to free up the money to justify having his contract? It's tough to say. I mean, they just signed Nylander, right? You wouldn't think they're going to try to move him. Like, they just signed him. Matthews, they don't want to trade Matthews. That would be really, really dumb. He's by far your best player. Marner's stats are not all that far off from Matthews, so he's going to want close to Matthews' money. And he, like I said, he's significant playmaker, plays in all situations. But I don't know. Is there a hockey trade there to be found? I'm not saying they need to absolutely go and trade him. They need to be careful, but I can understand why everything is going to be on the table here. And, you got to wonder about Sheldon Keefe's future. If they lose first round, you got to think Keefe is gone. He's already probably on a short leash. Obviously, being a Kyle Dubas hire, Trey Living gave him a chance to continue on, but they don't have first round. So, and he was definitely outcoached in the last game as well. That certainly played a role. You got to wonder about goaltending. What are they going to do there? Samsonov hasn't been all that bad. I'm not blaming him either, but again, he's got a 1-year deal. He's going to want more term. Do they want to commit to Samsonov after what this year has brought on a longer term basis? And if they don't, what are they going to do? Joseph Wall looks to be like a real, a good prospect. He's not really a prospect, but he's, the odds of him turning into a decent goaltender long term are pretty good, but he gets hurt a lot. And there's still some risk. He's still relatively unproven on a bigger sample size. So what do you do? Lots of questions remain around this Leafs franchise. and an early exit to the Boston Bruins, if they kind of break their hearts here once again, I do wonder what serious changes we're going to see. And I do think the two main ones are going to be a coaching change and a potential Marner trade in the offseason. But again, I think they need to tread carefully and do something different. Because you think about how many years this group has been at it. If they don't get it done yet again with an early exit, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And I just don't see it happening with the way ownership is changing a little bit. And we've already seen some changes at the GM spot. Shanahan's done to us last year. I suspect significant change will come if they don't shape up and get past the Bruins. Because they really should beat Boston, in my opinion. They really have no good excuse. This Bruins team is ripe for the taking. I really think they are. Like, they're a good team, but Toronto should be able to win. And if they can't, this is as much as Toronto beating themselves as it is the Boston Bruins beating them. It's just that simple, in my opinion. So let me know your thoughts on the Leafs and everything else discussed here today in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.